Welcome, everybody. Today, we are discussing the 4 operational KPIs that will separate great managed services providers from just good ones. So if you're an IT infrastructure professional, this is for you. Today, our subject matter experts from DataBank are Autumn Salama. She's the Vice President of Platform and Business Operations, Mike Baker, Vice President of Customer Operations, and Thomas Kennedy is the Vice President of Network Operations. Welcome, everybody.
Hello.
Good
Hey,
afternoon.
how's it going today?
We're going to cover these operational KPIs that were determined by our subject matter experts here. We're going to cover these in priority order. Let's start with the first one, which is first contact resolution. And Mike, I'm going to talk to you about this.
Okay.
So a little context. First contact resolution, it's one of those metrics that sounds straightforward, but it can be surprisingly difficult to execute consistently at scale. So here's my question. How does FCR performance reflect the overall health of an MSP's operations, and what does it actually take to move that needle?
That's a great question. So, as you mentioned, first contact resolution sounds straightforward, but it really reveals a lot about how an MSP operates. As we know, not all tickets are equally as complex. Some are very easy to solve, some are more difficult, and they do require escalation to a higher level. But the goal for any good, healthy MSP should be to continuously raise the bar, raise that percentage of issues that can be resolved at first contact. Because we all know when you can solve something at first contact, it goes a long way to building trust and satisfaction with your customers. You never have that, let me loop in someone else or let me get another technician. Just one interaction, problem solved. Now, doing it at the scale and some attributes that really show that an MSP is healthy is around first being that continual learning. So training itself is not just a one-time event, it's that ongoing journey where you give your people, your technicians that opportunity to learn, whether it's online training, course training, or just shadowing an engineer and building that pattern of recognition, developing their craft. It's not just burning through a ticket queue or throwing bodies at an issue. It's really getting them the education they need to help solve the issues quickly. And then the second is around documentation. Documentation, it has to be there when your technicians need it. Has to be ample, easy to find, searchable. Having a knowledge base that no one can find or navigate is basically like not having one at all. And when you get these two things right, that first contact resolution is going to naturally improve. You're not just trying to squeeze out performance of your people, you're removing the barriers that are preventing them from succeeding in the first place.
Thomas, I'm going to go to you for a follow-up question here.
Yeah.
Thinking observability is important. So observability and automation, they directly shape ticket response time, which then affects first contact resolution, and another metric, mean time to repair. So the question is, what's DataBank doing to strengthen this? And where do you see MSPs more broadly falling short?
Yeah, great question. I actually love this area, this topic to actually talk about. So observability in general, right? When we talk about first touch resolution, when you look at a managed service provider, a lot of times you see tiered support, right? So you have tier one, tier two, tier three. And Baker and I work really closely in this area, right? How do we get the tickets to the right teams so they can take action? So we're not wasting cycles, right? Um, Observability comes into that, right? AI ops, which is what we like to call it. So bringing the systems together into a single pane of glass, so you actually can see um, system integration where alerts are firing in one system versus another system and kind of correlating all that together and getting to an actionable task faster, right? And this is where we're at DataBank kind of working through right now. We're on a journey. This doesn't happen overnight. MSPs have systems, disparate systems that are all over the place, monitoring different things. You have to pull all that information into this observability platform so you get shared visibility on things and how they're correlated with each other. So one of the things we're driving towards right now on the network side, right, is from our optical platform to our IP platform down into our cloud environment. How do we tie all this together? And that way, when we get an alert that fires, we can eliminate the noise and really focus in on the root cause of the event. That's where the challenge is, in my view. A lot of MSPs now, because they have these different systems, and this takes time. This is not something where you flip a switch and you go to a vendor and you buy something off the shelf that just does what you want it to do. They have to work with you. It takes cycles. They have to understand your systems. They have to understand how they tie together. They have to understand your ticketing system. And then they have to bring all that together to really get you to a place. So this is a journey that we're on right now, and we're getting pretty good at it at this point. But a lot of MSPs aren't willing to take sometimes the time, as well as the costs, right, associated to do something like this. But I can tell you, when you get it to a better place, the metrics will show you. The first restoration, as well as your mean time to repair, will all come down. And then the next lever to pull on that is really automating the execution of the action. So once you get the visibility and you have the root cause, now you bring that automation to the other side to take the action for you. And now you're not waiting for manual intervention to do things.
Okay, let's move on to our next KPI, our operational KPI, and that's change success rate. So, Autumn, to you. A high change success rate, I'm thinking, doesn't happen by accident. So when you think about the variables involved, you got the volume of changes, you have the notice provided to stakeholders, and the role of automation. How do great MSPs build a change management discipline that consistently avoids causing incidents?
Yeah, thanks, Judith. I think the best MSPs treat change management as an engineering discipline, not a process that slows them down. And you hear this if, we're talking to a technical audience here, right? So a lot of people, got to submit that change request. Change requests are a good thing. They're part of the discipline that helps ensure when you have the level of uptimes that MSPs need to have. So it starts before anyone even touches anything. Every change has to follow a standard process that's built around at least 3 different things. You have a detailed method of procedure that walks whoever is doing the work through the steps that need to occur. You have a tested backout plan so that you know how to reverse course if something goes wrong. And you have a contingency plan for when you think something's going to go left, it goes right? And you're prepared for what happens there. This is not improvisation, right? It's a written, typically reviewed by a peer, reviewed by multiple managers, and tested in a lab before the change window even opens. The second major component when it comes to change success rate is around the infrastructure design. So the MSPs that are going to sustain a high change success rate operate in environments that have been built for maintenance from the start. You have active passive failover between 2 network devices. You have N+1 host configurations if systems operate within a cluster. You have redundant network. You have redundant power that are fed from separate upstream systems. That architecture is what allows you to take a component out of service for a change without impacting the customer. If the infrastructure was never designed for graceful degradation, every change is going to be a higher risk by default, automatically. To your point about stakeholder notice, it matters. Changes should be communicated with enough lead time that customers and internal teams can plan around them and not react to them. Emergency changes are just for that, emergencies only, right? So there should be a notice period far in advance to let people know what's going on.
Okay. Thinking maybe automation is important here. I mean, I've read it's often cited as a consistency driver in change management, assuming that it's implemented thoughtfully. What does a mature, well-governed change process look like?
So the CVE landscape right now demands that changes are executed at a pretty high volume and frequency. For better or worse, the amount of patching that we have to do is unrelenting. Again, if I'm talking to a technical audience here, we all know this, right? And unfortunately, at that scale, manual execution is where all the errors are going to creep in. So a technician that's working a long change window at 2 o'clock in the morning, they're on step 47 of 60, is just not going to be as precise as a well-written automation script running the same sequence every time. The automation enforces the consistency. It reduces the time that engineers must spend, keeping the infrastructure up to date. But automation is only as reliable as the infrastructure it runs against. If the environment has configuration drift, hosts or devices or services that have deviated from the baseline that you established, automated changes can behave a little unpredictably. So, a mature change program pairs automation with active drift detection and configuration management. You got to know what you're automating against matches what you expect to be there. When it comes to communication, customers don't need every technical detail, but they do need specifics. What's changing, when, how long is the window, what the expected impact is, and who to contact if something is off, right? So that level of transparency can take a change notification from something that causes anxiety to a sign that the MSP is in control.
We like customers to have confidence. That's good.
Yes, we do.
All right, let's move on to our third operational KPI, which is uptime. And we didn't make this the number one because it's table stakes. So the question is for you, Autumn and Thomas. Every MSP tracks this, but how you measure it and what you do with the data, that's where the real differentiation happens. So what are the best methodologies for measuring uptime in a way that's both technically rigorous and meaningful to our customers?
Yeah, I believe the differentiator, a key factor in the differentiator, sorry, is really around the data behind the uptime, right? What you're capturing, and then the multitude of points that you can capture it at, right? It's important for you to try to mimic as closely as possible, as an infrastructure provider, what the customer's seeing, right? There are issues that happen, obviously, in the network that are customer related, infrastructure related. But the closer we can get to aligning with that, then we see the things they see. So there's things around synthetic testing that we try to do with our customers to kind of mimic where they're going out on the internet and find the endpoints that they're going to, because there may be a problem with latency or something like that they're seeing that maybe we're not seeing. And again, since this is a technical conversation, most people know that, right? A lot of us have to deal with that on a daily basis. So how can we drive to providing the right data points? And then I will come back to my automation, obviously, pulling all this information together, right? From all this testing and all the metrics and some public information as well, too, with what's going on out on the internet. We can pull all that together to really get a good picture for what's happening. Because we still have to understand we are an infrastructure provider. Sometimes we don't have visibility into the applications that the customer is running, so they can be seeing things inside of their environment. The last thing is really, it's a close touch with the customer. You got to be able to have those engineering conversations very transparently with your customers to see whatever they're seeing on their network. If we're not seeing it, how do we get to a point where we can partner, right? We get on some calls, we talk about things, and we kind of work through. It may be a configuration issue between the two of us potentially, and how we connect together. Not necessarily my platform or your platform, but how everything's tied together. We don't have 100% visibility into the scope. I think that really helps. So it's partnering with the customer, and then it's putting your widgets out there in your network so you can see, and your storage and your compute, so you can see what's really going along, and then plugging in that automation again to kind of give you the results, right? Much faster than you would get if you're just trolling through configuration files yourself.
So transparency again is important. So Autumn, I'm going to go back to you with another communications question. We have transparency is increasingly an expectation, not a bonus. How should MSPs communicate uptime performance to customers in real time? And what role does that visibility play in building long-term trust?
Yeah. So, customers today expect to know what's happening before they have to call to ask. Sometimes we see it at the exact right minute, same time that they see it, right? Those things can be instantaneous. But an important part is having a status page, a live customer facing view of service health. But that status page is only valuable if it's kept current, which means that the MSP needs a defined process for updating it when an incident is identified, not after it is resolved. So, beyond the status page, proactive notification is essential. When an MSP becomes aware of an issue, the customers should ideally hear from them first. The cadence and format of updates during a critical event should be defined in advance as well. How often are you going to get updates? Through what channels? What information will updates contain? The structure keeps customers informed, and it reduces the volume of the inbound calls that are pulling engineers away from being able to fix the actual problem. So, but the communication doesn't stop after the event has been resolved. You still need to provide customers with a reason for outage document that explains in plain language, what actually happened. A root cause analysis details what failed, why did it fail, specifically what is being done to prevent that from ever failing again. And, that process, the RFO, RCA process, is where trust is either built or lost. A provider that delivers a thorough, honest post-incident analysis demonstrates accountability. And that accountability is what separates a long-term partner from, a commodity vendor.
Mhm. There's that confidence again.
Mhm.
So, Mike, I want to go back to you as we talk about our fourth operational KPI, which is Net Promoter Score. So, NPS gets cited constantly, but MSPs can fall into the trap of treating it kind of like a report card rather than a strategic tool. So, how should a great MSP actually use NPS data to drive operational and relationship improvements?
Yeah, MPS is one of my favorite subjects. So, um, yeah, MPS. You're right. It is one of those very misused metrics. A lot of people use it as just what already happened. So they celebrate when they get a good score and they panic over a bad one, and then it's rinse and repeat. Um, but they miss that opportunity to connect with the customer. Where an MSP really benefits from it is they get the score and they have an opportunity to connect to the customer, whether it's, a negative score or a neutral score, but is an invitation to really understand what they're experiencing. So actually using it as an opportunity is where I see a lot of people that different organizations don't follow through with it. So it's that follow through. You get the score and you take that information they're willing to tell you, which is, it's feedback. Feedback is, it's amazing opportunity for companies to learn how they can do better, where their gaps are, whether it's a gap in relationship or, an issue that's at a location or a technician or could be anything, is that opportunity to connect. Now, every detractor should receive this is where you don't want automation. You want every detractor, you should have someone reaching out to that customer directly. So a direct outreach, no form letters or, no just chain emails, but that real conversation. And then passive scores, that's another opportunity where a lot of people fail because it could be a decision where a customer is thinking about leaving, so you have an opportunity to discuss their experience and, you could save a customer who's like quietly thinking of leaving and, kind of convincing them to stay.
So let's talk a little about what drives that scores. You got a customer's willingness to recommend you. It's
Yeah.
ultimately a reflection of every interaction he or she has had with your team. So talk to me about what operational behaviors and cultural habits separate MSPs whose NPS climbs over time and those who plateau or even decline.
Right. So you're right that when they reach out to you as the correlation of all their experiences, it could be that situation where you resolve their issue in 2 minutes, or it could be one that took you 3 weeks. It's that combination of all their experiences together. So when you're getting that information, you're getting all their experiences tied up into their response. The MSPs that climb over time, they do share some consistent habits. The first one is it's around communication. So they have a proactive communication mechanism or methodology. They're not just reactively responding to a customer if they have an issue. It's that proactive communication. The other is around, the culture of ownership. Ownership matters to a customer. So when a technician picks up a ticket, it's not that they're just owning that one instance and then passing it along. It's that total ownership that they'll own the outcome of the issue, not just that one next step. And customers can feel that. So when you're working with the customer and they're very aware if you're taking ownership of it or just passing the baton to another technician, but to actually take that accountability and own that interaction is huge. The MSPs that plateau or decline usually lose sight of what matters the most, and that's that customer experience. And then you see the ones that climb, they've embedded that customer experience into every interaction they have with that customer, every follow through, every conversation they have. It's all about the customer and that customer experience.
That's great. And thank you for using your employee ownership program backgrounds for Zoom to get the point across. Love it. This is great stuff, everyone. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. And for our listeners, you can find more helpful resources in the aptly named resources section of databank.com. Bye for now.